Hello. Simply put, we would not have achieved our historic NBA deal last year without David Goodman and Chris Kaiser at the helm of our negotiating committee. Their guild service and experience is so vast that to list it would use up all of our time, and God knows Chris will use all of our time and more for his own speech. Many of you know Chris from his fireside chats, his passionate advocacy, and his vast collection of navy and gray hoodies. But tonight I want to talk about the Chris Kaiser I have the privilege to call friend. In the most difficult moments of this negotiation, September of last year comes to mind. Chris was always a thoughtful, steady rudder. His calming strength and unwavering faith in our collective power inspired all of us, reassured us, and kept us moving forward with clarity and conviction. Advocate best describes Chris. He often texts me, "Do you have a minute to talk?" And I know that he means he needs something, not for himself, but for another member, for a group of members, or a worthy cause. He is one of the smartest and most selfless people I've ever met. He has not only inspired me as a leader, but far more importantly, as a person. And in the darkest of hours, he never loses his sense of humor, his temper, or his complete confidence in the righteousness of our fight.
David Goodman's 18 years of Guild service clearly demonstrate that his commitment to writers and his masochism know no bounds. Goodman is a self-avowed homebody who is happiest cocooning in his home office, surrounded by weird collectibles, rereading dusty old Sherlock Holmes novels whilst eating a fried egg on top of 2-day-old leftovers. So he deserves half an award for simply leaving the house and commuting to 3rd and Fairfax all these years. Now, it's well known that David doesn't particularly like people, but lucky for us, he tolerates writers and loves this guild. If you saw Goodman out on our picket lines last summer, you could see how much pride he felt and how much strength he drew from being around fellow writers, especially new writers, who would soon be flooding his inbox with complaints. With his self-deprecating, sardonic style, I like to think of David as the Hugh Grant of labor leaders. But underneath the bitter exterior, Goodman really cares. You have no idea how much he worries about all of us, how much he wants us to be okay, to make a decent living, to be treated with respect. And if those things aren't happening, he will stand up like he did during our 148-day strike and do something about it. That doesn't mean that David's a fearless leader. He readily admits he gets nervous or scared when we take on a big issue or a difficult campaign. And yet, he has stepped up repeatedly, serving on 6 negotiating committees. Being scared, but doing it anyway, that's the very definition of bravery and masochism. I know all of us in Guild leadership would not have made it through the strike without Goodman's empathy and wise counsel, his brilliant strategic mind, and his inimitable humor. We all learned so much about leadership watching David watch Chris. All this to say, the clue is right there in the name. David is a deeply good man. On behalf of a grateful membership, it's an honor for Betsy and I to present the 2024 Morgan Cox Award to 2 wonderful human beings and the best champions writers could ask for, our friends David A. Goodman and Chris Kaiser.
When my kids were little, I used to sit them on my lap and tell them stories about Morgan Cox, what he did or stood for or something. all the things that he gave us that gave us such a great world that we have today. Tell us again about Morgan Cox, Daddy, they would cry. Lucky kids. To think that decades later, I would be standing here in front of all of you and my wife and my daughter and her husband, having won half a Morgan Cox. It means 50% more than I can say. And I thank you with half my heart. Thank you, Betsy and Michele and Meredith and the Writers Guild for this honor that celebrates some fights, some victories that, in fact, we all won together. Goodman and I were often the face of it, but the heart of it beat in literally thousands of us. I've been given 2.5 minutes to put into words what that all meant. A thing that most of you know, and Betsy kindly mentioned, seldom takes me less than 20 minutes, but I will try. Simply put, what happened, why we celebrate, why David and I are up here, is about the education of the Writers Guild. A transformation that took nearly 20 years, had its ups and downs, but in the end turned us into a fighting union and taught us to trust each other and our power, and led us to accomplish things that every single person said we could not do, and yet we did them. Again and again, we did them. It is an unbroken chain of sacrifice and bravery that begins with the generation that fought the strike of 2007 and 2008, from Patrick Verone and David Young, and extends through the strike authorization vote of 2017 and the agency campaign and the strike of 2023. It is owing to all the NEGCOM members and chairs, all the board members and officers and captains and lot coordinators and guild staff and thousands upon thousands of rank and file members. David and I could share this with 10,000 other people, and that would be a more accurate acknowledgement of how this guild actually works. It is always all of us together. That means there are too many names to mention, but I will say one right now. Ellen Stutzman, Ellen Stutzman, Ellen Stutzman. Actually, I lied. I wanted to mention two. So few people know how much of the burden of these past 10 years has fallen on the extraordinary shoulders of Rebecca Kessinger. The Guild owes more than I have time or words to repay to Rebecca. As for me, I am grateful for this thank you. But the truth is, I would rather be imitated than honored. I would trade this back today for a promise from the members whom David and I have led for so long, not to forget what it felt like last year. Don't forget what it felt like to have a common purpose, to make a common promise, to march side by side, to be there for yourself, of course, but mostly for everyone else. Don't forget that it's always a struggle, that nothing is given to labor that it does not demand, that though we have many allies from time to time, we are our only champions, and that if we are unbreakably for each other, we are and have always been enough. Don't forget to look out for each other between struggles, for those who are most vulnerable, most likely to be affected by tough times like the ones we're in now. Don't forget to give money, if you can, to the Entertainment Community Fund or any organization dedicated to the welfare of writers. Don't forget, and that will be more than enough thanks. Because I don't know what the next fight will be, when it will come, but it will come. And those who have sought to diminish labor have always counted our exhaustion and our fear, that we've had enough. Don't let that happen. Remember what you did, what everyone else doubted, and you did. I am here today because all these years I have believed in the power of community, of unions, believed in the Writers Guild and in writers. Because what makes us writers also makes us different and prescient sometimes and brave. It is, after all, our job to dream of things that never were and say, why not? If we remember these things, if we treat this moment not as a beginning or an end, but as a middle, I will take that and half a Morgan Cox any day. Thank you.
I hate Chris Kaiser. You have some idea of the abuse and denigration I have suffered since I became the sidekick to Jewish Obama. It's not just the speeches. A few years ago, when I was president, Chris and I co-chaired this huge member meeting, and afterwards, a writer, Lauren Youngervich, comes up to us and she says, "Great job, guys. And Chris, I was just in the lobby, and we decided you're the sexiest president the Guild's ever had." Well, looks fade, pretty boy. Seriously, I am very honored to get the service award. So, what is the value of Guild service? I'm asking. It's actually my wife's question. I think she got tired of explaining to my kids why I was crying. I'll try to answer the question, but first I have a few petty grievances. You remember last year when they said if we went on strike, the streamers wouldn't care. They had their libraries, they'll just show reruns, so we'll never get the viewership data or a success-based residual? We did. Remember, they said if we went on strike, they were just going to replace us with foreign writers. They didn't. Or they said once we were on strike, it turns out that's what the companies wanted as an excuse to get rid of all the big overall deals. That didn't happen either. So these were lies, and there were many more of them. And they're kind of ludicrous tonight, but last summer they were really scary. And I wish I could say we don't have to worry about them anymore, but we'd heard them all before. We can't touch the streamers. If we're on strike, that's what the companies want. The foreign writers thing, we hear that all the time. We heard it during the agency campaign. The agents are just going to sign foreign writers, or they're not going to represent writers at all, but they're never giving up packaging fees. I said this was going to be petty. The reason these lies work on us is because they play on our fear that we are replaceable. And individually, we are. We're replaced all the time. On movies we write, on television staffs, on that show I was running by that fucking guy I promoted. But we're always replaced, it's a true story, but we're always replaced. Wendy warned me about him. Steve wants your job, David. Anyway, we're individually replaceable, but we're always replaced by writers. So as a group, as a union, we're irreplaceable. And the value of Guild service is you get to remind people of that. You get to remind writers of that. And they remind you that you're valuable, even when you feel like the sidekick. The lies about the strike are coming. They're already here. There was no point in you guys going on strike. You really didn't get anything. And also, you got too much, which is why the companies can't afford to make anything. I've had some great mentors at this union: Rebecca, Ellen, David Young, Pat Verone, Tony Siegel, and many others. And what I've learned is what Chris said, is that though this strike is over, the fight goes on, and if we take our eye off the ball, everything we've gained can literally go away tomorrow. As Chris said, remember what you did and keep doing it. Participate, get involved, run for the board, step up, because I'm done. Thank you.